Night had already wrapped itself around the city when Amara stepped out of the taxi. The streets pulsed with color. Red lights reflected off wet pavement, laughter spilled from nearby bars, and somewhere beneath the noise, she heard the faint echo of drums. She clutched her coat tighter, her heels clicking against the concrete as she followed the rhythm toward a narrow alleyway where a single sign glowed in blue. The Haven. Dance Festival. One night only. Inside, the air was electric. The underground hall was dim but alive. Crowds pressed close to the stage, the scent of smoke and sweat heavy in the air. The walls trembled with music that seemed to come from the floor itself. Everyone was masked. Dancers, audience, even the hosts. It was part of the festival's magic. No names, no fame, no faces. Only movement. Amara smiled faintly. It was strange, being surrounded by so much life when she'd spent years hiding her own pain behind polite smiles and quiet galleries. She had built her career curating beauty, paintings, sculptures, light installations. Yet her own heart felt like a locked exhibit, fragile and untouchable. When the lights dimmed, a hush swept across the room. The next performer stepped into the spotlight, tall, graceful, wearing a black half-mask and dressed in flowing gray. For a moment he stood still, one hand pressed over his heart. Then the music began, and he moved. It wasn't just dance, it was confession. Each turn, each fall, each reach seemed to tear open a story too heavy for words. His body spoke of love found and lost, of longing that burned even after hope had faded. Amara couldn't look away. Something about the way he bent, the way his hand hovered over invisible memories, struck her deeply, like he was dancing her own heartbreak. She had spent years trying to forget the man who left her without a goodbye. Yet, watching this masked dancer, every buried emotion came rushing back. The ache of loss, the confusion, the quiet wish that love could somehow find her again. Her pulse quickened. She didn't know his name, his face, or his story, but she felt him. The crowd erupted in cheers when he finished, but Amara just stood frozen, hands trembling, heart pounding. When the lights came up, he was gone. She pushed through the crowd, searching for him. Dancers were already leaving the stage, masks still in place. Amara caught glimpses, gold, red, black, but not his. She turned corners, scanned hallways, but he had vanished like smoke. "Excuse me," she asked a stagehand, breathless. "The dancer in gray. Do you know who he is?" The man shrugged. "No one knows names here. That's the rule." He pointed toward the exit. "But sometimes they leave a token, something personal. You might get lucky." Amara followed his gesture. Near the back door, a small crowd had gathered, whispering excitedly. On the floor, under the soft glow of a dying spotlight, lay something silver. She stepped closer and saw it. A pendant shaped like a feather, delicate and shining as if it had its own light. Her fingers brushed against it, and she felt a strange pull, like fate had just brushed past her skin. Later that night, she sat in her apartment, the city lights flickering through her window. The silver feather rested on her palm. She turned it over and over, wondering what kind of person left something so beautiful behind. Maybe it was part of the act. Maybe it meant nothing, but her heart refused that explanation. There was something personal about it, something unfinished. As she placed the pendant on her nightstand, her reflection caught in the mirror beside it. For the first time in years, her eyes didn't look tired. They looked alive, curious, awake. "Who are you?" she whispered into the quiet room. The next morning, Amara sat at her gallery's front desk, pretending to work. Every brush stroke on the canvas before her, every sculpture around her, felt dull compared to that single dance. She tried to shake it off, telling herself it was just art. An illusion meant to stir the audience. Yet, deep inside, she knew it wasn't just the performance. It was him. That dancer had touched something she thought was gone. The part of her that still believed love could heal. That beauty could tell the truth when words failed, all day. She caught herself thinking of the way his body moved like water and flame, the way silence seemed to cling to him even in motion. By the time the sun set, she had already made a decision, one she couldn't explain, even to herself. She would find him, not for fame, not for curiosity, but because she needed to understand why his story felt like hers. And maybe, in finding him, she would find the missing part of herself too. That night, as the city glowed beneath her window, Amara slipped the silver feather pendant around her neck. It felt cool against her skin, grounding and mysterious at once. In her heart, she knew this was just the beginning. Somewhere in the city, the masked dancer still moved through the shadows, and though she didn't know his name, she could already feel it. Their stories were about to collide. Days turned into weeks, but the memory of the masked dancer refused to fade. Amara tried to focus on her work, the art exhibits, the meetings, the endless lists, but everything felt like noise compared to that one night. The way he had moved still haunted her dreams. The silver feather pendant, now resting against her heart, seemed to whisper to her every time she touched it. She told herself it was just curiosity, but deep down, she knew it was more than that. It was connection, the kind that happens once in a lifetime, without explanation. The obsession begins every Friday night. Amara found herself chasing echoes. She followed flyers, underground hashtags, and whispered tips from people in the art scene. The masked dancer was like a ghost, performing in different places, always unannounced, always gone before dawn. Each night was the same. Dim lights, pounding music, masked faces. Yet none of them were him. The crowd started to blur together, but she kept coming. She couldn't help it. Every performance she saw, she compared to the one that had stolen her breath. None came close. Her friends teased her gently. "Maybe he's just a fantasy, Amara. A symbol," they'd say. She would smile, but her eyes always drifted toward the door, as if he might walk in at any moment. A chance encounter. One morning, Amara visited the Community Arts Center, where she helped curate youth exhibitions. The place was full of light, walls covered in student sketches, laughter echoing from art rooms. It was the opposite of the smoky, hidden world she'd been wandering through. That's when she met Liam. He was repairing a broken light fixture in the main hall. Sleeves rolled up, hair slightly messy, a smudge of paint across his hand. He wasn't loud or confident. In fact, he barely looked up when she entered. But there was something calm about him, something steady. "Careful," he said softly as she stepped over the ladder. "This thing's more dangerous than it looks," Amara smiled. "Story of my life." He chuckled, just a small sound, but it carried warmth. They talked for a few minutes, about the exhibit, about art, about how fragile beauty could be. There was no spark of drama, no mystery, but somehow the quietness between them felt safe. When she left that day, she caught herself smiling, not because of excitement, but because, for the first time in a long while, she felt seen. The return of the masked dancer 2 weeks later. Amara heard rumors of a secret midnight show. One said to feature the masked dancer everyone whispered about. Her heart raced as she made her way to the hidden venue, a dim warehouse near the river, where graffiti walls told their own stories. Inside, the crowd was buzzing. Candles lined the floor, and when the first note of music began, the air seemed to still. He stepped out of the shadows, the same black half-mask, the same grace that had burned into her memory. It was him. The dance began slowly, movements filled with sorrow and restraint. But soon it grew wilder, more desperate. His body told a story of struggle and hope, like he was fighting his own past. Amara's eyes glistened. Every motion seemed to speak directly to her heart, to her memories, to her pain. When the performance ended, she realized tears were streaming down her face. The crowd cheered, but she couldn't move. Her chest ached with something unexplainable. Awe, sorrow, longing. Before she could reach the stage, he disappeared again, swallowed by the crowd and darkness. But as she turned to leave, a folded piece of paper slipped from her coat pocket. She hadn't felt it before. She opened it slowly. The note read, "Some truths are too dangerous to dance with." Her breath caught. It was his handwriting. She knew it instinctively. He knew her. Somehow he had found her. Between two worlds, over the next few days, Amara tried to make sense of it all. The dancer knew who she was, or at least had taken notice of her. But what truth could be so dangerous? The question wouldn't leave her mind. Meanwhile, Liam kept appearing at the art center, fixing things, helping the young artists, quietly making her laugh when she least expected it. There was something grounding about his presence, gentle and constant, like sunlight after rain. One afternoon, they shared coffee in the courtyard. "You look distracted," Liam said, watching her stir her drink absent-mindedly. "I saw something beautiful," she replied softly, "but I can't tell if it was real or just something I wanted to believe in." He studied her face for a moment, then said, "Sometimes beauty is both." His words stayed with her. That night, Amara lay awake staring at the ceiling. She realized her heart was now split in two, between the mystery that consumed her and the kindness that steadied her. The dancer represented passion, fire, and fantasy. Liam represented comfort, healing, and peace. But why did she feel like both were connected somehow? Like one was the shadow of the other. The pull of fate. The following weekend, she went back to the underground world again, this time with a purpose. She wanted to confront the dancer, to ask why his movements felt so personal, why he seemed to know her story. But when she arrived, the stage was empty. No performance that night, only silence. As she turned to leave, her eyes caught something glimmering near the stage lights. Another silver feather, identical to the one around her neck. Her heart pounded. He was still out there, watching, waiting. She didn't know his name, but she could feel the truth moving closer, like a storm building on the horizon. Amara held the feather tightly in her hand. Whatever this was, it wasn't over. Not yet. Amara could barely sleep after finding the second silver feather. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the dancer. His shadowed face, the way his movements spoke of love and loss. The words on that note. Some truths are too dangerous to dance with. Dangerous truths. What did he mean? And why did she feel like that warning wasn't just about him, but about her? The decision days later, Amara sat alone in her art gallery, the afternoon lights spilling through tall windows. Around her were pieces that told stories of truth and illusion. Painted masks, broken glass sculptures, abstract portraits of faceless people. She stared at them, lost in thought. For years, she had built her career around helping artists show their truth. Yet, she had been running from her own, from the part of her that still believed in love, even after betrayal. Her phone buzzed. It was a message from one of her gallery contacts, a friend who knew people in the underground dance circuit. "He'll be rehearsing tonight at Studio 19. No mask. If you want answers, that's your chance." Amara's hands trembled. After all this time, she would finally see him. Not the mask, not the performance, but him. The meeting Studio 19 was small and old, hidden behind an alley near the river. The air smelled of dust and sweat. The floor creaked under every step. A single light burned above the stage. When she pushed the door open, music floated through the room, soft, aching, like a confession in motion. And there he was, the masked dancer. He was alone, lost in movement, his body cutting through the dim light like poetry made flesh. His mask was still on, but his rhythm was raw and vulnerable. Every motion screamed truth. Amara stood silently, unable to breathe. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but nothing prepared her for the weight of it. When the music stopped, he froze, like a statue caught in memory. Then slowly, he turned toward her. Their eyes met. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then he said quietly, his voice rough but calm, "You shouldn't be here." "I had to come," Amara whispered. "I needed to know who you are. Why your dance feels like my story." He looked away. "Some stories aren't meant to be found." She took a step closer. "Then why leave the feathers? Why find me again?" He didn't answer. Instead, he reached for the speaker and changed the music. "Something slower, deeper. Then watch," he said softly. "Maybe you'll understand." The dance of truth, he began to move again. But this time, it wasn't a performance. It was personal. Every step carried weight. Every motion pain. He danced through anger, grief, and forgiveness. He fell to his knees, his hands pressed to the floor like he was holding back tears. Only his body could cry. Amara's heart pounded. This wasn't just art. This was someone fighting to be seen, to be forgiven. When he finally stopped, the room was silent except for their breathing. She took a slow step forward. "Please," she whispered. "Take off the mask." He hesitated, his hand hovering near his face. "Are you sure you want to know?" he asked, his voice breaking slightly. "Yes," she said. "I need to." The reveal, he reached up and pulled the mask away. Amara's world froze. It was Liam, the man from the art center, the gentle, quiet soul who fixed lights and made her laugh. The one she'd started to trust. The one she'd begun to feel something for. Her breath caught in her throat. "Liam?" He looked down, ashamed. "I didn't want you to find out like this," he said softly. "Not until I could explain." She took a step back, her hands shaking. "You lied to me. You stood there, knowing who I was, pretending we were strangers." "I never meant to hurt you," he said quickly. "I just wanted to dance again, without being judged for who I was." Her voice trembled. "Then why hide behind a mask?" Liam sighed, his gaze distant. "Because I used to be someone else, Amara. Someone the world hated." Liam's truth. He sat on the edge of the stage, eyes lost in shadow. "I was a professional dancer once, before the accident. My brother and I performed together. We were known for pushing limits. But one night, during a show, something went wrong. He fell. And I couldn't save him." Amara's eyes widened. "Your brother?" "He died that night," Liam whispered. "The media blamed me. They said I pushed him too far. I couldn't face it. Couldn't face anyone. So I disappeared. The mask. It was the only way I could still dance without seeing their judgment. Without seeing my own guilt." The pain in his voice was heavy, real, and human. Amara's anger softened, replaced by something deeper. Sorrow. "You danced to heal yourself," she said quietly. He nodded. "And when I saw you that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. You looked at me like my dance meant something, like maybe I wasn't broken after all." Tears filled her eyes. "But you still lied." "I was afraid," Liam admitted. "Afraid that if you saw me, the real me, you'd see the man the world condemned. Not the one who danced for you." The break silence filled the room like smoke. Amara stepped back, her hands trembling. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she said. "Everything between us, the gallery, the talks, the laughter, was that all a performance too?" Liam's face fell. "No, that was me, the real me. But I understand if you can't trust that now." Amara turned away, tears slipping down her cheeks. "You should have trusted me with your truth, Liam. Maybe then I could have trusted you with mine." She took off the silver feather pendant and placed it on the piano beside him. "Keep your mask," she whispered. "It suits the way you hide." And before he could say another word, she walked out. Cliffhanger ending. Liam sat alone in the empty studio, the pendant glinting under the light. He picked it up, clutching it tightly, his jaw trembling. For the first time in years, the mask felt heavy in his hands, not as protection, but as punishment. He looked toward the door where Amara had disappeared, and whispered, "I never meant to lose you too." Outside, Amara walked through the cold night, her heart shattered, yet alive with the truth she had finally uncovered. The man she loved and the dancer she couldn't forget were the same person. But the truth, once unmasked, had left her lonelier than ever. Fade out. Amara sat at her gallery desk, staring at her reflection in the glass window. Outside, the city hummed with life, lights flickering across the wet streets. Inside, she felt hollow. A quiet ache lodged deep in her chest. The memory of Liam, of the dancer, the friend, the man she thought she knew, haunted every corner of her mind. The unmasking had shattered something she wasn't sure could be repaired. She picked up the silver feather pendant from the shelf beside her. It gleamed faintly under the soft gallery lights. Once, it had felt like a connection, a bridge to him. Now it felt like a reminder of betrayal. Throwing herself into work, Amara buried herself in work, curating exhibitions with an intensity bordering on obsession. Each brushstroke, each sculpture, each arrangement of light and shadow became a way to distract herself from the memories that clung to her. Yet, no matter how many hours she spent cataloging, curating, and planning, the masked dancer returned to her thoughts. The way he moved, the raw emotion of his dance, the truth she had uncovered. It refused to fade, even as visitors admired the beauty around her. Amara felt detached, like she was watching life through a glass wall. Liam's absence left a quiet emptiness that no art, no project could fill. Liam's solitude, meanwhile, Liam moved through the city like a ghost. After the unmasking, he had stopped reaching out to her. He returned to the shadows, performing alone in abandoned studios, warehouses, and empty streets. His dances were no longer for an audience. They were confessions, cries for forgiveness that only the walls could hear. Each movement spoke of guilt, longing, and the weight of loss he carried in silence. He left feathers behind sometimes, tokens, meant for her, though he dared not hope she would find them. Each step, each turn, was a conversation with the world, and with the part of himself that still loved Amara. Parallel struggles' days stretched into weeks. Both of them wrestled with their fears in parallel. Amara with her fear of betrayal and the fragility of trust. Liam with the terror of being seen for who he truly was. Amara sometimes imagined his dances in her mind, how they must be raw, private, and painfully honest. She wondered if he thought of her, if he still longed for connection as desperately as she did. Meanwhile, Liam imagined her face every time he moved. He remembered her laughter, the way her eyes lit up in the gallery, the quiet warmth she offered him in the art center. But he stayed hidden, convinced that his truth would only drive her away. The feather as a symbol, the silver feather pendant, became a silent companion for Amara. She kept it hidden in a small box under her bed, touching it often as though it could give her courage. It reminded her of the night he danced for her, of the way his movements had mirrored her own heartbreak. It reminded her of the connection they had shared, fragile and fleeting. Though she tried to move forward, the feather whispered stories of what might have been, a past she couldn't let go of, and a future she wasn't ready to face. Moment of clarity. Weeks later, Amara curated a special gallery exhibit titled vulnerability, in motion, celebrating artists who expressed raw truth in their work. Paintings of broken figures, sculptures of unsteady hands, and photographs of fleeting gestures filled the space. As she walked through the exhibit alone, she realized something important. Truth, like dance, was never perfect. It was messy, emotional, and unafraid. And it was beautiful precisely because it dared to exist without disguise. Her thoughts drifted to Liam, to the unmasked truth of him. For the first time, she allowed herself to feel compassion instead of anger. She understood his fear. She understood the way masks could protect even as they separated. The invitation. The day ended quietly, and Amara returned home exhausted, but thoughtful. On her doorstep, she found an envelope, unmarked. Inside, a single card. One last dance. Midnight. Warehouse by the river. Come alone. Her heart skipped a beat. She recognized the handwriting immediately. It was his. The invitation was daring, intimate, and impossible to ignore. Amara held the card close, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. The final performance would not just be about dance, it would be about truth, forgiveness, and courage. Her fingers brushed the silver feather, still hidden in her pocket. She knew this moment could change everything, or leave her broken for good. And yet, despite the fear, she knew she had to go. Somewhere in the dark, Liam waited. And the final dance would decide whether their paths would converge or remain forever apart, fade out. The warehouse by the river was quiet, almost sacred. Candlelight flickered along the cracked concrete walls, casting long shadows that danced in the corners. A single wooden platform had been set up for the performance. The air smelled of dust, smoke, and anticipation. Amara stood at the entrance, her silver feather pendant cool against her chest. Every step she took echoed in the cavernous space. Her heart hammered, not just from nervousness, but from the weight of everything unsaid between her and Liam. Somewhere in the shadows, he was waiting. The entrance a soft hum began, then music, slow, melodic, filled with longing. From the far corner of the warehouse, Liam stepped into the dim light. The black half-mask glinted faintly, but his eyes were visible now, wide with a mixture of fear and hope. When he saw Amara, the tension in his shoulders softened just slightly. The world outside this room had disappeared. There was only the music, the dance, and the truth that had been buried for too long. The dance of redemption Liam moved first. Every step was deliberate. Slow at first, as if testing the ground beneath him. Then faster, more urgent. His body told the story of guilt, longing, and regret. He fell to the floor, rose again, spun in circles that made the shadows twist and stretch. Amara felt tears prick her eyes. The motions were no longer just a performance. They were a language. Every leap, every stretch of his hands, every fall mirrored the emotions she had felt since discovering his truth. She realized he was not just dancing for her, he was speaking to her heart, confessing what words could never carry. Amara's revelation. Unable to resist the pull any longer, Amara stepped forward. Her movements were hesitant at first, then bolder as she followed the rhythm of the music. She mirrored his gestures, sometimes softly, sometimes with strength. It became a conversation in motion. His guilt met her sorrow. His longing met her need for trust. Each step, each turn, each pause was an exchange of forgiveness and love that neither could express in words. Her breath caught as she realized the truth. They had both been hiding behind masks. He behind his literal one, and she behind her walls built from past betrayal. The climax, the music swelled. Liam extended a hand toward her. She took it, their fingers interlocking as their movements became synchronized. Two hearts moving as one. He spun her around, lifted her, and for a brief moment, the world dissolved. She felt every pain, every fear, every longing melt into the rhythm of the dance. Then, as the final note of music hung in the air, she reached up and removed his mask. This time, it wasn't about unmasking identity. It was about acceptance. She saw him fully. The man who had been broken, the man who had hidden, and the man who had loved her all along. Tears ran down both their faces. No words were needed. Forgiveness and understanding flowed through their movements like water. Gentle, strong, unstoppable. Symbolism and emotional release. Amara placed her hand over his heart, feeling the rapid beat beneath her palm. She whispered softly, "We don't have to hide anymore." He nodded, finally letting go of the fear he had carried for years. His dance had been a confession. Her joining him had been an acknowledgement. Together, they had transformed pain into art, regret into love. The silver feather pendant glinted in the candlelight, no longer just a token of mystery, but a symbol of courage, truth, and connection. The resolution as the final music faded. They stood together on the stage, breathing heavily, bodies intertwined, hearts aligned. Outside, the city continued to hum, unaware of the small miracle that had taken place in the shadows. For the first time in years, Amara felt complete. Not because the dancer had been revealed, not because the performance was perfect, but because truth had been spoken, trust had been restored, and love had been allowed to move freely. They remained close for a long moment, staring at one another, each silently promising to face life without masks, without fear. Cliffhanger led in to the finale. Somewhere in the distance, the warehouse door creaked, but neither noticed. They were immersed in the rhythm of forgiveness, healing, and new beginnings. Amara's heart, which had been broken and guarded for years, now felt full. Liam's soul, once heavy with guilt, now felt free. Together, unmasked and unafraid, they had created something eternal, a dance of love that would not fade. Outside, the night held its breath. Inside, two hearts moved as one, fade out. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Amara's gallery, casting golden light over her carefully curated exhibits. The city outside was already alive with movement, but inside there was stillness, a quiet peace that had been absent for so long. Amara walked slowly among the paintings, her fingers brushing the frames as she reflected on the night before. The final dance had changed everything. The fear, the distance, the unspoken words, they had all been transformed into something new. Truth. She looked down at the silver feather pendant around her neck, now a permanent fixture. It glimmered softly, a symbol not just of mystery, but of courage, vulnerability, and the willingness to love without masks. Rebuilding trust. Liam entered the EDE gallery quietly, carrying a small cup of coffee and a tentative smile. He paused at the doorway, watching Amara move among the art, her posture relaxed but her expression contemplative. "Good morning," he said softly. Amara turned, her face lighting up. "Morning," she replied, her voice warm but still cautious. They walked together in silence, side by side, letting the quiet speak for them. Words were unnecessary. The previous night's dance had conveyed everything that needed to be said. Eventually, Liam spoke. "I know I hurt you, and I don't expect you to forgive me all at once, but I want to try. With you." Amara looked into his eyes, seeing the honesty there. "I don't want to be afraid anymore," she said. "I want to learn how to trust again. With you, and with myself." And for the first time in years, they smiled at one another without reservation. The power of art and truth over. The next weeks, their lives began to intertwine in a new way. They attended gallery openings together, taught art workshops for children, and collaborated on exhibitions that celebrated vulnerability and honesty. Liam returned to dancing, not in hidden warehouses or under masks, but openly, guided by the joy of expression rather than the fear of judgment. Amara supported him, and in turn, his presence helped her open her heart to possibilities she had long denied. The gallery walls now held more than art. They held stories of healing, of love that had faced pain and survived. Patrons noticed the authenticity of the exhibits, the raw honesty that flowed from each piece. Some said it reminded them that beauty often comes from struggle, that courage is shown not in perfection, but in exposure, a lasting symbol. The silver feather pendant found its permanent place in the gallery, hung delicately near the entrance, catching the sunlight as it streamed through the glass. It was more than jewelry now. It was a reminder of the journey they had taken together, of fear and longing, of hidden truths and revealed hearts. Anyone who saw it might think it was simply decorative, but Amara and Liam knew its story. It was a symbol of love, of resilience, and of the courage to be truly seen. Reflection and emotional closure. One evening, as the gallery quieted and the last visitors left, Amara sat on a bench near the silver feather, watching Liam rearrange a sculpture with meticulous care. She whispered to herself, a soft smile on her lips. "We all wear masks, but love asks us to dance without them." Liam looked up, catching her gaze, and in that moment, no words were needed. Every fear, every regret, every longing had been laid bare, and they had survived. Together. The city outside continued its chaotic rhythm, but inside the gallery, there was calm. There was safety. There was love that no longer needed hiding. Amara reached for Liam's hand, and he took it without hesitation. Their fingers intertwined, naturally, like the closing of a circle that had taken months to complete. Final image. The silver feather pendant sparkled in the sunlight, suspended gracefully in the gallery. Beyond it, the exhibits glimmered with color and life. Stories of heartbreak, redemption, and courage. And in the midst of it all, Amara and Liam stood side by side, unmasked, unafraid, and completely seen. The journey had begun with mystery, continued through longing and pain, and now ended in the quiet beauty of truth. Their hearts, once hidden, were finally unmasked, dancing freely in the light of honesty and love. Fade out.